Look at all that gray hair. All right. It shows me there's one person here, but I don't know yet on StreamYard if that's me. Oh, I think that's me. I can always say hi to myself. Hi, Tennille. Hi, how are ya? I got your message that Boone can't join us, so I'm glad you're here. And I guess we'll wait a few minutes, see if somebody else shows up. I was just going to mention you, Kate. Hi. I was just going to say to Tennille, we'll see if you show up, so I'm glad you're here. How are you doing? I'm doing good. Tennille, how are you doing? I heard in your last video you were getting a dishwasher, so I hope that's working well. And you got it all set up and running properly. I really will try to put on some makeup next time. I look so incredibly pale here. Tennille says, I see you, I hear you, but I am buffering as usual. Hopefully only for the next 2 or 3 months, right, Tennille? I heard that you guys are going to finally be getting your Wi-Fi up and running, your better internet access, right? Probably not Wi-Fi, maybe it's have to be connected hardwire. Yeah, but either way, that'll be good. You're on a train, Kate? Okay, are you going home or are you going to work? It's like, what, 3 or so in the morning for you? So you should be going home, I guess. Those are long nights, eh? Okay, I actually have water this time. I don't know if you guys have a drink or not. Tennille, do you have coffee? It's 9 o'clock at night for you. I know you drink coffee later into the evening. So, okay. Kate, Tennille relayed to me, Boone gave her a heads up that she's not going to be able to join us tonight. And I don't know, maybe Eden and little Aussie will pop in a bit later on. I know that on the last live stream, Deb left a message. Oh, hi, Deb. I was just mentioning you. Wondering if you were going to be here tonight with us. I'm glad you're here. Great. Thank you. Oh, you're sweet, Tennille. But I do look kind of pale and washed out, no? Like, I mean, as we age, look, I mean, I hardly have any eyebrows anymore. I really don't have any eyelashes. But, I mean, I'm alive and kicking, so thank God for that, right? Okay, so you know what? I'm going to put up, like, one of the first questions, and we can get started. And then anybody else joins, well, we'll stop and we'll say hi to them as they come, right? So we are starting off with 1937. And the first question that Tennille has, and she was so sweet because she typed them up for me this weekend. That was really nice. Thank you very much. Is this: was the verbal battle between Sula and Eva spontaneous or premeditated? So what do you think? Was the argument that Sula and Eva had premeditated? Did it occur just in the spur of the moment? What do you guys think about that? And Tennille, you're going to have to let me know in the future. Everybody else can comment too what they think of it. Is I sometimes put up like a few questions at the same time, because then what I've noticed is that sometimes people, when they're answering the first question, they're kind of like going to be answering bits of the questions that follow at the same time. So I'm going to pop them up and then go back to the first one again. So the second one related to that was, what were your impressions of the battle between Eva and Sula? And how did you react to Eva's eviction? Do you think Sula was justified in what she did to Eva? Okay, so I'm going back. So first question again was, what was the verbal battle between Sula and Eva? I mean, was it spontaneous or was it premeditated? I guess on Sula's part. And then what were your impressions of this battle that they had, Eva and Sula? And how do you feel and how did you react to Eva being evicted? Okay. So Kate's saying definitely premeditated, and I tend to agree with you. I think Sula kind of like plans everything in advance. I think there's very little that occurs with her that's spontaneous and not considered. I think she really plots how she wants things to go, and she tries to come up with the best means of achieving what her end goal is. Deb says it was the result of a lot of built up resentment. Yes, tremendous amount there. Absolutely. So, what do you think? Okay, I'm sorry. How did you react to Eva being evicted and thrown out? What was your impression of that? That Sula just said, "Okay, out you go." I mean, we know of a few comments of people in the town what they were thinking, but how did you feel about that? That Sula just got rid of her. Kate says, yes, I do think that she was justified in putting Eva away. Deb had said that it was the result of a lot of built-up resentment. And Deb, by the way, Tennille had mentioned earlier in the chat that she's buffering a lot, so she's going to be in and out listening in, and she's going to like respond with a comment when she can, but she's having a bit of a time with her internet connection. So Kate says she morally deserved to be thrown out, in my opinion. Yeah. She has certainly done a lot of terrible things, Eva, hasn't she? So what was your impression of Sula and Nell's reunion? On the one hand, right, we've got the juxtaposition of Sula evicting and getting Eva out of the house. And then on the other side, we now have a reunion of sorts. So on the one hand, there's the split. And on the other hand, we've got a reunion. And we get to see Sula interacting and reacting in both of them. So what was your impression of Sula and Nell reuniting after such a long time apart? So Deb says, yes, it was Eva's home, right? So technically she shouldn't have been kicked out. That was an awful thing to do. I mean, I'm putting those words in there, right? That it's an awful thing to kick somebody out of their home. And yes, I agree with you. On the other hand, she had done a lot of terrible things, right? But really, nobody in this instance over here, neither Eva nor Sula, is entirely pure and blameless in how they've conducted themselves so far, right? And as things develop, we see that that's clearly even going to become more so the case, seeing that of Sula with her behavior, right? So again, what was your impression of Sula and Nell reuniting after all this time? And Deb says, it was just like old friends getting together after not seeing each other for so long and reminiscing. Mm-hmm. That's very true. And Nell was so happy to be reunited with Sula. Yeah. Which is something, isn't it? Like when we have a long-term friendship that goes back very many years, even if we don't see that person for a long time, it's almost as though those years disappear when we reunite, and we're so glad to have them back once again. No? Deb's Way says, oh, Eva was innocent, but it was almost like Sula getting revenge, like maybe she returned to take over. I agree with you. I think she did come back thinking she was going to take things over. And you mentioned that Eva was innocent. I'm going further back. I'm thinking Eva clearly wasn't so innocent in that she brought about, of course. Oh boy, I've lost the name. Boy's death, was it? I'm mixing up the name, guys, here. Sorry. And also her very aloof and kind of emotionally cruel response to Hannah when Hannah was questioning her about being loved. If it had actually driven Hannah to being either careless that she ended up, setting herself on fire, or she did it intentionally, there was a very negative result to Eva's behavior there too. Kate said Sula was her usual self and wanted something from Nell. That it seems that Oh, Deb's way, you're saying no, she was not innocent. Okay, got it. So Kate pointed out that Sula was her usual self and wanted something from Nell, as she always seems to want something from somebody, right? And Tennille says they just fell into their old relationship like putting on a comfy old pair of shoes. I love these expressions of yours, Tennille. I really do. Oh, yeah, Plum's death, not boy. Okay, great. Thank you very much for reminding me. Deb's way. I mistyped. Eva was very guilty of a lot of wrongdoing. Yeah, she certainly was. And I mean, we're certainly seeing the impact of that, right? On so many people's lives and even spanning generations, right? To her daughter, now to her granddaughter. And from her granddaughter, this awfulness is just going to continue unless Sula decides at some point she's going to have a real change of heart and change her behavior. So that'll be interesting to see whether or not that actually comes about. I'm curious for that one. So question number 6, and thank you so much, Tennille, for remembering the questions. It's helping me keep track of them. Is Sula's fear of Eva justified? Is her being afraid of what Eva may do justified? I think most of us would say yes, considering how Eva intentionally brought about, right, Plum's death. She murdered him, and how she also may have been indirectly involved, right, in Hannah going to her death. So is Sula's fear of Eva justified? I think 100% it is. Absolutely. So what do you ladies think about that one? Kate says yes, definitely. Definitely, I agree too. I think I'd be very terrified of being around Eva because you never know, when is she going to maybe turn on you? And for what? Okay, so Tennille then asks us, why would Sula be willing to turn over her finances to Nell? What's that all about? What's going on here? And Deb shares, I don't think she was afraid of her any longer. You don't think Sula was afraid of Eve any longer? She was before she left town, but she returned knowing what she was going to do. I think you're right. Yeah, she came back with a plan, definitely, right? I mean, that's kind of obvious in how she conducted herself. I mean, she's barely walking in the door, and she's already got it figured out what she's going to be doing and kicking Eva out. So I agree with you 100%. She figured, okay, you know what? This is a situation that I'm going to get on top of, and I'm not going to let anybody stand in my way. And Tennille agrees that yes, Sula's fear of Eva was justified. And Kate shares that Sula threatened Eva, but she had already killed maybe 2 of her children. That's right. I mean, even if she had just killed 1, that would be enough to terrify all of us. But the fact that Hannah also died, and yes, very, very frightening. So again, going back to the question, why would Sula be willing to turn over her finances, her money, to Nell? What's going on with that over there? Is she trying to somehow finagle Nell into some sort of a situation that's going to be to her advantage? Because we don't really see Sula doing anything generous, right, with her spirit. Tennille asks, Deb, do you think Sula was exaggerating when she told Nell she was afraid of Eva? Oh, that's a good point. I think she was legitimately afraid of her, perhaps initially, until she decided, you know what? Maybe she thought this runs in the family. If Eva can be like this, I can be conniving and manipulative too. And I can become dangerous and people need to worry about me. Tennille says, perhaps Sula said she was afraid as an excuse to put her away. Ah, okay, I see here. We're talking about Sula being extremely manipulative once again. Yeah. Deb says that at that point, I don't think she was afraid of her any longer. I think she had already planned out what she was going to do to get rid of Eva, to get Eva out of her life. That's a very good point. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. So, again, why would Sula be willing to turn over her finances to Nell? And what do we think of Sula's reaction to Jude's complaints. Kate says, I'm sure that Sula was using Nell with the money. Yeah, because it seems like Sula uses everything in her possession, right, to her advantage. Neil says, I see what you mean, Deb. If Sula was really afraid, she probably wouldn't have come back at all. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Deb says, so people wouldn't think that she put Eva away just to get at her money. Ah, yeah, that's very true, too. Sneaky, conniving person. Deb says, that's right, Neil. If Sula was afraid, she probably wouldn't have come back. So she came back unafraid and with a plan how she was going to get control of everything and use it to her advantage. Good point, says Tennille. Okay. So that's one of the reasons we think that Sula was willing to turn over her finances, right? Because this way she would look altruistic and generous. And of course, she's only getting rid of Eva because, Eva's so threatening and she's dangerous to be around. It's not greed in any part wanting her house. Very, very good. So what do we think of Sula's reaction to Jude's complaints? And then following that, what does Sula's "You're the envy of the world" speech to Jude tell you about Sula's view of the world? So again, what do we think of Sula's reaction to Jude's complaints? And what does Sula's "You're the envy of the world" speech to Jude tell us about the way Sula views the world? Kate says Nell was innocent and Sula would use her. Yeah. It's interesting, though, in all of that time that's passed, Nell has grown in some regards, and yet she's still very, very vulnerable and malleable, and there's another word. I can't think of it right now. Manipulable by her friend Sula, right? She's still under her spell, as it were. Danielle says, maybe having Nell do her bookkeeping was a way to bind their lives together once again, to bring them back together and involve themselves in each other's lives. Kate says, Sula treats Jude like any other man would, in my opinion. Or like Sula treats Jude like another man would, in my opinion. Sorry, Miss Rabat. Yeah. So again, what do we think of Sula's speech to Jude saying, you're the envy of the world? And what does that tell us about how Sula is seeing things? Kate says, good point, Kate. Tennille says, good point, Kate. She does have a very masculine view of the world. Yes, she does. It's interesting, how we see somebody as being very action-oriented to the point of not caring about other people's feelings and being very manipulating, as being more of a male, masculine characteristic traditionally, no? And Deb says, Jude must have been a nice-looking man and desirable. So, what do we think is the significance of the phrase, you knew me, in Nell's lament? What did Nell mean by that when she said, you knew me? Any thoughts on that? I'm going to just take a sip of water. So what do we think of that? What do we think Nell meant when she said, you knew me? And pursuant to that, were Sula and Jude just having sex, or was there something more going on? Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, from Jude's point of view, I mean, many men, thankfully, hopefully none of our husbands or partners, but many men have the view, right, that they separate out emotional attachment from sex. And there are some women who can do that as well, but for women, it's generally more emotionally based, right? So maybe Jude was just having sex with Sula, but really, could Sula honestly think that having relations with Nell's husband was going to be okay? Like sharing things from the past, whether it was a hair clip, a dress, a book. I mean, we're talking about a partner over here, right? Tennille says, Sula feels no pity for Jude. I think that appeals to Jude because Nell always feels sorry for him. Okay, so like maybe Jude is of the impression, okay, Nell is always pitying me. She has sympathy for me, which means I'm not in a very high position, being held in a very high position of standing in her eyes, whereas with Sula, she just accepts him as he is, and so that made him more comfortable. Deb says she thought their love for each other was so complete, they knew all about each other. Okay, that's what Nell meant with you knew me. And Kate says you knew me was the fact that they were two halves of a whole. And Deb says that they were just having sex, Jude and Sula. And Deb says Sula didn't know what real love was. But even if she didn't know what real love was she such, let's say, a sociopath that she could not perceive by watching others in life to know that relationships between partners and husbands and wives is somewhat sacrosanct and shouldn't be just taken for granted as, hey, that's her husband. I can, have sex with him too. I find that really interesting. Tennille says Nell is confused because she didn't realize that it didn't matter what happened before now. They are strangers. Kate says it was just sex, like Hannah had sex with many men. Sula is very masculine, in my opinion. And Kate is saying that sex may be confused with love. Very, very true. And this is interesting. I find this question from Tennille. Why was Nell focused on the embarrassment of Jude's open fly or the dust under the bed during this encounter? I'm wondering if Nell, as a means of, let's say, saving face and distracting herself from, let's say, the emotional pain that she was going through, then managed to tune into superficial things that she had learned in the home she had grown up with her mother, where everything had to be superficially perfect, look good on the outside, even if on the inside there were real problems. So I'm wondering if that's what she's acting over here, if that's such a learned response on her part, that because she can't deal with the pain, she is focusing on superficial little things, like that it's dusty in the room, there's dust underneath the bed, his fly is open, as opposed to really taking a close look at what's going on. Because clearly the dust and, his open fly don't really matter much over here, right? So Tennille says, I think they were playing and experimenting and having fun together, but it didn't mean anything to Sula. She seemed to just be passing the time with Jude. Now again, I mean, this just speaks to my naivete, but I can't understand how a person will think it's okay to have sex with another person's partner or spouse, and that's just going to be fine. There are going to be no repercussions. It's not going to impact their relationship at all. And to me, it boggles my mind to think that. Kate says to detract her from the agony of what she had seen. Yeah, I agree with that, Kate. That's exactly what I think too. She just couldn't bear the pain, so she found something else to try to focus on. Tennille says, that's so true, Kate, and some people substitute sex for love, but they are not the same at all, in my opinion, not interchangeable. I agree with you, Tennille, very much. And Deb says, yes, it was a kind of an escape mechanism, Nell reacting like that. Kate says Jude was just another guy to Sula. Again, I don't get that. How can her friend's husband be just another guy? I mean, I cannot relate at all. It's like so foreign to me. So, what is our opinion of Sula's reaction in this situation? So, what do we think of how Sula responds to this? Sula the homewrecker. Technically, of course, Sula is not responsible in and of herself, right? Clearly, Jude is wrecking his own home as well, too. He had full control over his own behavior, and yet he decided he was going to have sex with Sula, knowing full well that the person he was going to have relations with had been and might still be his wife's absolute best friend, almost like a sister to her. How can he do that? Kate says, you don't change habits of a lifetime. That's right. You behave a certain... They're very, very hard to change. That's true. Tennille says, I don't know how Sula could be so casual about something so life-changing for Nell. And Deb shares that Sula probably thought she had done nothing wrong. Kate says, Sula wasn't embarrassed. She's definitely a sociopath. Yeah, I take what I want, and who cares of the consequences for others, right? As long as I am happy and I am satisfied, that's all that matters, right? The interesting thing about sociopaths, from my studies a very long time ago of psychology, is to what degree we can sort of like hold them responsible for how they behave and how they react. And I'm not talking legally here right now. I'm just talking in terms of, let's say, interpersonal relationships. You know, if they or can they not, even in the slightest, appreciate that even though they feel differently about a situation, they're able to observe from the behaviors of others that society at large in general does not approve of something they're going to do. Kate says, I agree, she thought she'd done no wrong. Very interesting. And so Tennille asked, this is another really interesting question, I think. What was the gray ball of strings and fur just to the right of Nell's vision? So what was that all about, this gray ball that she saw? What do we think is going on with that? And why wouldn't Nell look at this gray ball of fur? So again, these two related questions. What was this gray ball of strings and fur just to the right of her vision? And why wouldn't Nell look at this gray ball of fur? What's going on with that? So Tennille says, Sula almost acts like Nell was in the wrong for responding how she did. Yeah, that's also a very narcissistic behavior there, isn't it? Where somebody will do something wrong and then completely turn it around and like gaslight you and make you think, hey, no, wait a second, this is really your fault. You've caused the problem. You should be apologizing to me for making me feel so comfortable with your reaction to my bad behavior. Yeah. These are really quite the characters in Tony's book, I find. No? Very well developed and very interesting, very complex in their characterization, how she's built them up. Tennille says, I think confronting the gray ball would have made her have a breakdown. Yeah, she was so much on the edge of her emotions, I guess, that she just couldn't handle anything else, right? Kay says it was the problem with her friend and Jude. She couldn't face up to them. Yes. And then soon after that, like Tennille points out, what does Nell mean when she says that her thighs are empty and dead? What does she mean with that? Did she mean that there was only one man for her, only Jude? Or that she feels she is now no longer attractive to anybody? that she has zero worth because she's been, as it were, like left behind. Kate says, Nell should have confronted Sula and Jude, but didn't, so she felt weak. Okay, yeah, she was too weak to do it. Too maybe afraid of what their responses would be. I don't think it was the case where somebody doesn't want to confront somebody because their anger or their rage is just so huge. They need a bit of a timeout and to remove themselves from the situation lest they explode. I really think in Nell's case, she has always been so weak and so understanding, so go along to get along, as it were, that it's just not in her character. And here she's faced with two people she loves probably more than anybody else in the world, and they both betray her in such a way. It must be very devastating for her. Kate says that the only man for her had been taken, and that's what Nell had meant when she said that her thighs were empty and dead. What a sad thing for her. Deb shares that she had lost the man in her life who she really thought loved her. Yeah. Do you think she felt also that she lost the friend that she had? Did she feel, I'm wondering, do you think Nell ever felt that she was loved by Sula? Did maybe Nell misinterpret their relationship? I'm curious about that, what you guys think. Okay, so if nobody has anything else to add to this one, then we're going to go on to our next section, which is 1939, a couple years down the road. And somebody dropped a comment. What is that? Let's see. Kate shares, Nell knew that Sula had killed Chicken Little and could have told her secret. Yeah, that's very true, right? She was always, always loyal to Sula. And yet here Sula's behaving in a very disloyal fashion, right? Regardless of what Sula thinks, this is Nell's experience of what's taking place, right? That Sula has been disloyal to her just as much as Jude has been. So the first question we have that Neil came up with for 1939, why do you think blaming Sula and labeling her as evil made the people of Bottom act better? So why do we think that labeling Sula as being evil makes other people in Bottom act and behave in a better way, differently? What's going on with that? Kate says that Nell had misjudged her friendship with Sula all along. Deb shares that I feel that Nell really loved Sula, really thought she was a best friend. I mean, can you just imagine that double whammy of a betrayal? Here's your husband, and here's your absolute best friend who you've known for such a long period of time. You've shared so much with. As Kate pointed out, you've protected their deepest, darkest secrets. And what are they doing? The two people you love more than anybody else are betraying you? Just terrible. Neil says, I think it means the end of physical love for Nell when she talks about being dead and empty with her thighs. Love and hope of future children, among other things. I say, okay. I guess because in her mind at this moment, right, Jude is the only one for her. Maybe she feels he was the only one who could possibly love her. We don't know really if Nell's self-esteem at this point is such that she's going to think, wait, okay, so Jude's out of the picture. Clearly I chose the wrong man. If he could behave this way, there'll be somebody else for me. There'll be more in the future. So why do we think that blaming Sula and labeling her as evil gets other people of Bottom to act better? That's an interesting question. Makes you wonder, like, are they acting better? One, because they're taking a close look at somebody else's behavior, and then they're thinking, you know what, maybe I ought to be more careful lest I'm labeled by people in the community too? Is it a bit of their own self-righteousness so that they distinguish themselves from somebody else who is more evil? Okay, chairs, they don't want to be seen as a person like Sula, so they try harder. And Tina says, I agree, Deb, that Nell thought that Sula was her best friend. Yeah. I think that Nell interpreted the relationship clearly very, very differently. It was much closer, much tighter, much more loyal and connected than how Sula obviously perceived the relationship. Nell was handy each and every time, right? She was a friend, somebody to spend time with, somebody who went along with what she wanted to do. She was convenient. So why did the people of Bottom like to gossip about Sula? What was there about Sula that made the people gossip about her? And Kate shares, yeah, that it was a double betrayal. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Just horrible. So why did the people of Bottom like to gossip about Sula? Tennille shares that I find it fascinating that once they name their evil, the people of Bottom become better people. Yeah. That because once they name Sula as being evil, they themselves become better people. I think they're just afraid to be lumped in with everybody else. There are a number of people who love nothing better than to gossip and to put somebody else down just because that then, in their own eyes, boosts them as being better than, loftier than, etc. And I think at the same time, too, that when you hear enough people in your community pointing out that somebody else, oh, how terrible they are, and talking about that person, you start thinking, wait a second, they could be talking about me too. So maybe for the next little bit, I ought to be like on my best behavior so I don't become the object of all of that gossip, right? And Kate shares that she was probably quite frightening. I wonder also if the people of Bonham feel comfortable gossiping about Sula because Sula has left the community for such a long period of time that she was now, in some regards, effectively an outsider. And she was no longer, let's say, one of the group, as it were. If there was a little bit of a distance over there that had been created. Kate shares that she was a scapegoat for other people. I agree. And Deb says it seems like there always had to be someone being ostracized or criticized. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that Sula was sort of like the perfect one at the moment, right? To point to and to criticize because she was so casual about her behaviors. She also had this, well, I don't care what anybody thinks attitude. And at the same time, yeah, she had just come back from a very long time away. She had left for such a long period of time. I think she was seen as being somewhat separate and apart. So she was the perfect person to pick on, as it were, point out bad behaviors about. Tennille says everyone loves a good gossip and they didn't have to worry about offending anyone when they talk about Sula. And Deb shares, because she became let's start over. Because Sula came back to town and she created such havoc. That's right. I mean, she comes in, right? Like, where was it? Last week we were talking about this wind that has sort of like come in, right? And change came with it. And here Sula, in effect, is like coming in also sort of like this wind bringing so much change with her, right? Eva's being cast out from her house. She's having an affair, a one-night fling with Jude that ends up ruining Nell's marriage and their friendship. I mean, everywhere she goes, something nasty is following Sula. Kate says, sorry, this train Wi-Fi is so slow, but you're with us, Kate, so thank goodness for that. And I'm really glad that Tennille's with us, too. That's really great. If you're buffering, Tennille, I'm glad it's mild at the moment and you're able to join us. I'm so happy about that. And Tennille says, because Sula didn't follow the rules. Yeah, very, very true. Well, Tennille sharing that, Kate, too. Just like, I'm sorry that she's also having a hard time with her Wi-Fi, just like Kate is. But you're still here. That's what counts. Kate says, or she was seen as someone who thought she was better than others, that she had gotten above herself, right? So others had to like bring her down a couple of notches, right? Okay. So going back to this double betrayal, why do we think that Sula had sex with Jude without considering Nell's feelings? This brings me back to like what I was asking before, like, are sociopaths capable of really appreciating what other people's feelings are? Can they at all or not at all? And if they can at all, if they desire something so much, does that then override or cloud their ability to perceive how somebody else may respond to their behavior? Tennille shares also because Sula had slept with all their husbands and they wanted to say nasty things about her. Yeah, I find this really interesting, how people will respond. I mean, clearly over here, yes, okay, these wives can be upset with what Sula did with their husbands, but at the same time, I guess the women, because they feel so attached to their husbands, don't want to be on their own, don't want to have to struggle with them, being the breadwinner for the family and taking care of the children by themselves, right? It becomes a whole lot easier to point the finger at the person who's having these relations with your husband than to really lose it with your husband, right? Because that right away is going to change all of your life circumstances and generally your kids too. Whereas in most cases, particular, I think at this period of time, the men would just remove themselves from the circumstance and the women would be stuck with everything. So that put them in a very dangerous position. Deb says that because Sula had no conscience. And Kate shares that because she could. Sociopaths have no empathy. So, what is our impression of the spider, free fall, snake's breath metaphor? What is our impression of the spider, free fall, and snake's breath metaphor? I should have gone back and reviewed this because at the moment I can't recall that one. Tennille shares that if Sula was evil, then that was beyond their control. So that alleviated some of the guilt and shame of being cheated on. Their husbands couldn't resist evil Sula. It wasn't their fault. Yeah. We do play games with ourselves like that sometimes in life when something is just too difficult to manage and cope with, right? We convince ourselves that someone else is to blame or that we are completely blameless in the circumstance just to make ourselves feel a bit better. So going back to Tennille's question, what is your impression of the spider, free fall, snake's breath metaphor? Kate shares, I can't remember this. I'm sorry. I can't remember it either, Kate. Tennille, I'm sorry. I guess I just must have read over that and didn't pay close enough attention to it. And I didn't review that section of the book tonight before coming on. So if you're not buffering and you can share with us a little bit of what your impression was, Tennille, that would be super. I don't know if Tennille is with us right now or if it's Deb who has left. But I see that one person is gone, so maybe somebody has buffered and dropped. But we'll see. Okay. So we're talking about the impression of the spider, free fall, and snake's breath metaphor. And so we'll move on to the next question until we get an answer. Why do you think Sula wanted to be sad? Oh, Deb, you're here. Okay, great, Deb. So I think it's Tennille who's having a problem right now. I see that she's not with us. And Deb, you don't remember that one either. Neither do I. So we can move on. Why do you think Sula wanted to be sad? Yeah. Now this is interesting, right? Because if Sula is a sociopath, the only one she can ever feel sad for really is herself, right? Or is she pretending to be sad just so that she then gets some more empathy and a bit more understanding and maybe even forgiveness from Nell and or let's say the general population of bottom that are talking about her. Is she looking for sympathy, something to tone down people's reaction to her behavior? Is she faking it? Hey, Tennille, I'm glad you're here. So, Tennille, we all had a little bit of a hard time remembering the reference here in this question. What is your impression of the spider, free fall, and snake's breath metaphor? So, if you can hear us now and you could share that, that would be great. I think you're gone, though. Again, I'm not sure by what's showing me here on the screen. Kate says that she thinks Nell wanted to be sad just so she would have some self-pity. Makes sense. Okay. I'm still here with you, but as you're tuning in, I'm actually going to go over to YouTube to check what's going on with the live on the channel because it says there is only one person here with us. Yeah. And that's me. So that's odd. Where did everybody go? Okay, so Deb. Oh, okay. I think that was a glitch on my part. It's showing people are back here. Okay, so Deb says, I don't think she was looking for sympathy. She could care less what people thought of her. She lived her life her own way. And Tennille says, I think it's the only thing she could even feel. Sadness. Deb says, yeah, now it says 3. Yeah, it went back up. You saw it before where it showed 1. So I thought, okay, I'm the only one here. What's going on? And Kate says, I'm here. Good. Alrighty. So once again, Tennille, if you have a moment just to share with us in the comment what it was you were referring to, because we can't recall this impression of the spider, free fall, and snake's breath metaphor. But in the meantime, we'll go on to the next question, which is, what did the gifts that Ajax gave to Sula represent? So what did these gifts to Sula represent? Tennille says, I don't think she felt sad like you or I. No, she clearly, you would think we had a real good demonstration, in fact, of that, right? I mean, there's Sula watching her mother, God forbid, burned to death. And, we don't really see any display of panic, any efforts to help her mother, any tremendous, not just sadness, but like heart-wrenching expression of loss in that time either, right? When her mother is dying. So what did these gifts that Ajax gave to Sula represent? And at the same time, I'm going to mention, in case we start bringing it up in our answers, what was it about Sula that attracted Ajax? And Kate says, do you mean gifts as in the milk? I think that's what Tennille is referring to. Tennille, if you're here, but I believe that's what she's referring to, that Ajax would bring her something. So what did these gifts represent? And what was it about Sula that attracted Ajax? And I'm thinking, for a man who doesn't, let's say, want to make a commitment, have no strings attached, nobody to answer to, Sula is kind of like the perfect person for that, right? She's just as carefree, cares as little about the relationship as maybe, the other person does. There's not going to be any pressure to make it permanent, to have children, to build a life together. Everything is just free and easy. We're here when we want to be, and that's it. I wonder if that's what he saw as being so attractive. Kate says Ajax saw her as a free spirit, not wife material. They were both outsiders. Tennille says, I'm here in looking, you're here and you're looking for that metaphor in the book. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that, Tennille. Appreciate it very much. So, yeah, I agree with you, Kate. I think that's what attracted Ajax to Sula, right? That she was a free spirit, not wife material, and they were both outsiders. And Deb says that he was just being friendly to her because everyone else was against her. Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Okay, so that was kindness on his part. So now the converse of that question, what was attractive about Ajax to Sula? What did Sula find attractive about Ajax? Oh, I'm sorry, I got a wrong question. Here we go. What about Ajax attracted Sula? Okay. Oh, Deb found the reference. Yay, way to go, Deb. I should run out and get the book. I should have the book right here in front of me as we do this. Tennille, Deb says that the reference to that metaphor is on page 120 of the book. Deb, I know Tennille is reading the soft copy. Are you reading the soft copy too? Because I know sometimes from hard copy to soft copy, the pages are different. Okay, Tennille's got it. Yes, page 120. Thank you. And Deb says it was his appearance that attracted Sula to Ajax. And Kate says, yes, the same. He was very easygoing. Kate's agreeing with you, Deb, and that he was being friendly to her because everybody else was against her. Okay, and you've got the soft copy, Deb? Okay. Yeah, I've got an older looking copy that I had borrowed from the library. That's why I thought, okay, maybe the page was different. Okay, so while Tennille takes a look at that, what were your thoughts about the scene with Sula and the Deweys? What is going on with that? What do you guys think is happening there with Sula and the Deweys? Mm-hmm. Anybody have anything to say on that one? What's going on with Sula and how she's behaving with the Deweys? The follow-up question to that is, why do you think that Sula sometimes torments the Deweys and then at other times she rewards them? There's right like this tug and of war kind of thing right going on. And I do know from personal experience, sadly, that with narcissistic individuals, maybe sociopaths too, I don't have as much experience with them, that the push and pull can be a very manipulative behavior. Because you reward the person, it draws them closer to you, and then when you push them away, they fear, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose this person. I better do something for them. I better be nice to them. It's highly, highly manipulating. That's what my impression is over here. And Kate is saying, oh, the references to that poor child that she hung upside down. And Tennille says, I think this is trying to represent the feeling Sula had about other people and life in general on page 120. And Tennille says that Sula is just plain mean to those boys, to the Dewey. And Deb agrees, saying that she had control over those boys. Kate says she was abusing them as a narcissist would, like a cat with a mouse. Yeah, playing with them. Again, for her own entertainment, for her own purposes and ends, right? So, what do we think the gold under Ajax's skin represented? What do we think the gold under Ajax's skin represented? Kate, Tennille says, Kate, good analogy, just like a cat with a mouse, toying with it. Toying with the Deweys and with everybody else, right? That she encounters in her life one way or another. So what do we think the gold under Ajax's skin represented? What's that reference all about? Anybody have any thoughts on that they want to share? And then the question that comes up after that is, what do we think Sula means by saying, I have sung all the songs there are? And what does she mean by that? What is that? I have sung all the songs there are. So Deb is replying to the question about Ajax's skin, the reference to gold, like she was trying to make him into something perfect in her life. That's very good. That's very insightful. I like that one, Deb, very much. And Kate shares, I think that by this time she was crazy to actually believe. I think that by this time she was crazy to actually believe. Kate, if you can hear me, this is just me maybe, but can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Actually believe what exactly? I think by this time she was crazy to actually believe. Mean that somebody could, or that she could develop feelings for somebody? Or am I on a totally wrong track? Yeah, and the question we're talking about is, what do we think the gold under Ajax's skin represented? And what do we think Sula means by I have sung all the songs there are? So Tennille says, I think the gold represented the value she could see in Ajax as another person, which was unusual for her. Okay, like you mean sort of like for the first time she's really appreciating that another person has worth beyond just the superficial appearance, that there is actually something to the essence of a person that is worthwhile. Okay, Kate is sharing that he had gold and would have scrubbed him to death. Okay, that's what you're saying when I think that by this time she was actually crazy to believe. Okay, that he had gold and she would have scrubbed him to death. Okay, got it. Thank you for that. Tennille says, thank you for your patience, Aaliyah. I know you're not behind, Tennille. Thank you for your patience with me. I keep tripping over my words. Gosh, you guys are really great. I appreciate you guys also very, very much. Okay, so what effect did Ajax's leaving have on Sula? So what effect did his leaving have on Sula? I mean, I would think that for Sula, that would be quite the new experience for her, right? Feeling that she's being left, somebody is rejecting her, somebody is going. She's usually, I believe, the one who does all of that, right? The rejecting, the leaving, and, who cares what's going on behind me? Oops, sorry, I skipped ahead. All the songs means to me that there was nothing left in her life for her. That's what Kate thinks that reference to Sula saying, I have sung all the songs there are to be sung, means that all of the songs represented that there was nothing left in her life for her to pursue. And Tennille says, I may be giving Sula credit for being more sane than she actually is at this point. Could be. And what is the significance of discovering Ajax was actually Albert Jacks? Okay, that he was actually Albert Jacks. What is the significance of discovering this for Sula and for us? Tennille says, oops. I agree, Kate, that she tried everything she wanted to try and it left her feeling unfulfilled. Okay. That almost is enough to trigger some empathy for me, for her character, by thinking that she had such a huge void in herself, whether it was a lack of love, a lack of self-love, that no matter what she sought in life or tried, it was not enough to make her feel more whole and complete on her own. Kate says she found out that Ajax, she didn't even know his name. It's true, right? She had sort of like a nickname for him, didn't know what it represented, and yet here she was. Deb's Way says, well, supposedly she thought she had found someone to love, but she didn't even know his real name. She really knew nothing about him. That's interesting then, no? So, like, what is it about him that she loves? I guess she knows a bit about his more tender and caring behavior, and maybe that was enough to convince her, hey, this is a lovable person, even though she knew nothing else. Kate says she slipped up by playing the part of a wife, which pushed Ajax away. Deb says, yeah, she didn't even know his real name. Tennille shares that they just let her know that she didn't know that man, so couldn't possibly feel anything for him. So that let her know, when she realized she wasn't even aware of what his full name was, that she didn't know that man. So how could she possibly feel anything for him? Certainly anything really deep and meaningful and significant, right beyond, let's say, superficial feelings. Kate shares she felt how she made others feel, maybe. That's a very good point. I think maybe for the first time she felt a little bit like that. And she was, oh, goodness, I take other people for granted so much. Is this how they feel when I do that to them? I wonder if she had that kind of insight, or if, once again, this was just all about her. And here's the last question that I have for Tennille. And this one is, do you think Sula would have been happy with Ajax if he had stayed? That's a really interesting question, right? Oftentimes we really want and we covet or we desire something, but then when we actually have it, it doesn't hold that same appeal that it did previously. It's almost that in the getting, it loses whatever we found attractive in the first place. I wonder if that would have been the case with Sula. I suspect it would have been, but who knows? Tennille says the only reason he was interested was because she was different. When she became like other women, he left. Yeah, I think too. He was interested in that it was a very casual, very superficial relationship. What you see is what you get. No demands, no ties, no obligations. And that the minute there was even the slightest hint of that, boom, out. There he was. Kate says maybe a little insight, but I doubt it. I also doubt that she had too much insight over there. I think it was all about herself again. And Kate says, no, I think he was a fantasy. Yeah, that it would have never turned into anything long-lasting with him. Tennille says, Kate, maybe she did get an inkling of what she did to Nell. That would be interesting. I personally, I don't think so. Not from her behavior. I really don't think so. Deb says that she was too self-centered to be content with just one man. And I think, had Ajax pursued a relationship with her, I think very quickly the tables would have turned and she would have then once again been the one rejecting and walking out. I think for that one moment, it was the fact that somebody was denying her of something she wanted that was maybe a bit shocking to her. She wasn't the one doing the denying anymore, right? Tennille says, no, I think the relationship between Ajax and Sula would have failed if he had stayed. I agree with that for sure. Kate says that she had never been happy, maybe, which is quite sad, but part of being a narcissist. Yeah, very true. Often with narcissists, right, they're very self-inflated sense of self and self-importance is because deep down inside they are so empty and so lacking in any sense of real worth, so they overcompensate to the nth degree. And Kate says you can't deny a narcissist. No, that's very, very true. So that brought us to the last question that I had from Tennille. And again, Tennille, thank you so much for creating the videos for us, for putting together these very thought-provoking questions. I know you put a lot of time and effort into it, and it really, really is appreciated. So thank you. So again, the last question was, do you think Sula would have been happy with Ajax if he had stayed? I wonder. I don't think really much of anything makes Sula happy, right? Not even making others unhappy. That would be more, let's say, Well, a sociopath perhaps derives pleasure out of seeing others suffer, but that would be a sociopath with more, what do you call it? Masochistic tendencies, right? So no, it was her narcissism. I think that was more at play over here. And Tennille shares a lot of control because he left her and she can do anything about it. Maybe that's why she was upset. A kid of power over her own life. A kind of power over her own life. I'm sorry. And Kate says, yes, you're amazing, Tennille. Oh, that's sweet. She really is. She does a great job. And I think it's really wonderful when all of you ladies show up as well and participate too. That's really terrific. So thank you all for that. Thank you, Tennille. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Kate. It's wonderful when the others can join us. And Kate shares that Sula had never been happy, in my opinion, ever. What a horrible way to live, you know? Very, very sad and lonely. Well, fortunately, we are not in those circumstances. And we have one another. We have other wonderful people in our lives and a lot to be grateful for. So thank goodness for that. Does anybody have anything else they would like to share, whether about the book club, how to handle a life stream differently or better, anything they just want to share in general? Tennille says, thank you. Thank you so much, Tennille, for everything you do. We really do appreciate it, really, honestly. And Deb says, I think there were times that she thought she was happy, but I don't think she was ever content in life. No. Yeah. Very, very sad, no? So, that said then, Deb saying, yes, thank you, Tennille. That's very sweet. So, that said then, Kate, you're sweet. I do a great job. I'm trying, Kate. I am trying. Thank you, Tennille. I want you guys to know that, please, if I say I really appreciate what you're doing, and Tennille, you're doing an amazing job, it's not because I'm fishing for you to say anything nice back. In fact, I find it embarrassing, and I don't feel I'm worthy of it, but thank you anyway. And Deb says, yes, she sure does, Kate. Yes, and this is back for you, Tennille, because, yes, you put a lot of work into it, Tennille, and you're doing a wonderful job with this. Kate says this book is amazing. Yeah, it has so many layers to the character development, and so many surprises along the way. And the depth revealed in the situations and the metaphors is really, really something. Yep. Deb says, go keep the ball rolling here. Thank you. I'm so sorry about the 2 weeks where I was not on schedule, but I'm doing much better now, so I really appreciate that. Tennille, I'm God bless you. I'm hiding that one there. Here, I'll put your smiling face here back instead. Okay. So we're actually finished a lot earlier than last week, right? I think last week it was close to midnight. Midnight EST my time. So I think that's midnight for Deb. That's 11 p.m. for Tennille. And it's some crazy hour in the morning, like 4 a.m. for Kate. Oh, God bless you, Kate. So if that's all, then I guess we'll see one another next week, or maybe in each other's videos this week. I have been very far behind on watching people, let alone posting any content to my channel. I am trying to get back to that. Hopefully I'll put up something this week just to give everybody an update. My health is doing better. I'm feeling stronger. I'm getting more done during the day. I do have a lot to catch up on around the house because while, this is 2021, the situation is such that still having 2 young adult male kids living at home with you does not mean that if, mommy goes off to the hospital one day and then spends time recuperating from surgery, that everything is running smoothly. And that while hubby is still trying to get his work done from home, that he's able to stay on top of everybody. So there's what to get caught up on. But I finally have enough energy, I think, that I can do the catching up, take care of myself, and still have a little bit of energy left over for other things. So that's really good. So Deb says, same time next week. And yes, unless anybody wants or needs to suggest a change of time, then you can do that either by emailing or leaving a comment for Tennille on one of her videos, or letting me know, or dropping a comment in the video here. Just be in touch with us, and that can always be discussed. But otherwise, yes, it will be same time next week, Monday night, 10 p.m. EST, 9 p.m. CST for Tennille, and 3 in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. for Sweet and Brave Kate. And Tennille says I'll have the next 2 video discussions on her channel. They'll be up on Friday. And Kate says, take care, everybody. Stay well and safe, everyone. Mwah. Same to all of you ladies. Be blessed. Have a wonderful week. Stay healthy. Have fun. Take care of yourselves and those you love. And Deb says, have a great week. Tennille says, yes. Y'all take care. And thank you all so much for making book club happen. Deb says, okay, 3 a.m. for you. Good night. Yeah, good night, and have a great start to your morning. God bless you, Kate. Hey? Okay, so love you guys. Thank you so much for joining in, and look forward to seeing you next Monday night. Same time, same venue, same hostess. Hopefully with a bit of makeup so I don't frighten anybody. Okay. Tennille says, all my best to you, Kate, and your dear mom. I'm not sure what that's about. Hopefully your mom is good, but all the best to everybody here. And good night, all. God bless you, and take good care. Bye for now. Okay, I'll just pop these up quickly. Love from Kate. Thanks for everything from Dev. Love from Tennille, and love from me.